I genuinely believe that this ending and probably some of these final chapters were changed to send a more easily digestible conclusion to the readers, especially to those only invested on a surface level. I believe Shingeki no Kyojin was a story about realistic, believable human beings facing a very cruel world, and what it takes to push against the flow of such circumstances. Characters had to make decisions so unbelievably gruesome that you as a reader or watcher can empathize with their situation. Nothing is black and white, everything in the story has a reason for existing. The later chapters, and especially chapter 139, undermine this entire philosophy. Attack on Titan was reduced to a generic romance fanfiction, so bad that it retrospectively makes the previous story and happenings way worse, and to some extent even irrelevant. The living, breathing world was reduced to a linear, flat story. I'll try my best to give this almost masterpiece the credit it deserves, and also showcase why and how its greatness was stolen from it. So where was a DEM used in the context of Attack on Titan, and to resolve what plot? I would argue that there were one major DEM and one minor Deus Ex Machina introduced. Let's start with the major one. An unchangeable, deterministic future. Attack on Titan was a story that has weight and decision making. Recruits deciding whether or not to follow Eren's lead to join the Scouts. Eren having conflicting thoughts about transforming to fight the female Titan, believing in his friends and squad mates, and ultimately, possibly being the reason they all died, which led to Eren learning that his decisions matter a lot. Erwin deciding to die that close to reaching his final goal for the sake of humanity. Levi having to decide whether Erwin or Armin gets to survive, and most importantly Eren's decision to convince Ymir and defy his brother. So now the author tries to tell us that these decisions weren't real decisions, because the outcome of the world is predetermined, essentially portraying that every single being in this world is caught up in the flow of it.
大きな流れに逆らうってとても勇気がいることだから尊敬するよ。
Chapter 131 introduces officially. Beforehand, Eren has seen the future in the form of future shards coming true multiple times, but this time Eren comes to the conclusion that the future can't be changed. This makes Attack on Titan's story from a living, breathing world to a linear roller coaster ride instead. A story on rails with no other possible outcomes. Eren essentially realizes that he never had free will in the first place, which is required to make sense of the last few chapters. You probably ask yourself why it seemed Eren stopped 80% through the rumbling, why he didn't really resist Mikasa killing him, why he didn't just transform into a flying titan or something and prolonged his life. Well, now you know. Eren understands that he can't change the outcome. The only way he can change a man that, from the day of being born, has pushed forward. Killing 2 people as a child to protect someone he deems worthy to protect. Slaughtering innocent people within the walls to get his revenge on Annie. Someone that was disappointed that there were people outside the walls. Someone that forced his own father to finish the stride towards freedom. Someone who cut off his leg, gouged out his eye, to not only kill hundreds of innocent people himself, but also to force his closest friends to kill thousands of innocents themselves for his goal. There's only one logical way to revise such a determined and coherent character. A Deus Ex Machina. As I said, there are actually 2 of those required to make sense of the ending. Let's start by analyzing the last chapter to understand what I'm talking about. We already know why Eren made the decision he made in this chapter, because of the previously introduced unchanging future. He was caught up as a slave to an immovable path. But this entire conversation is contradictory to Eren's character. Eren is selfish. His ultimate priority is his own salvation, his path to his goal. After kissing Historia's hand and understanding the future, Eren has always put his loved ones as second priority after his own goal. After he realized that such sacrifice is necessary, Eren forced the scouts to endanger themselves as a whole to support his will. He wants to give them all a long life, but understands he needs to endanger them to reach that future. The only person he managed to save from endangering her was Historia. Sasha, on the other hand, was a victim of that. Just like the Hannah's death, Eren is coping with Sasha's death by almost laughing about it. He cares a lot about them, but his number one priority is his goal. Furthermore, Armin will not stand as a hero of the world. Armin will stand as an accomplice to the greatest genocide in the history of mankind. The best friend of the mass murderer who supported said friend for his entire life up until the point of the rumbling, indirectly and unknowingly helping Eren to make the rumbling happen. The world will not see Eldians as the heroes. Now that's nothing short of a delusion. They won't be able to retaliate immediately is also a delusional thought. The rumbling has a very linear and predictable way of destroying the planet, which means the 20% humanity surviving also means 20% of the world's technology surviving. Paradise has no shot at defeating a force like that with the very small amount of people they have and very medieval technology they wield. If you didn't know already, the world of Attack on Titan is just our planet flipped around, in which Paradise is the island of Madagascar. There are many theories stating how many people Paradise has in comparison to the rest of the world. Either way, it's very fair to say that Paradise was and is a very, very small portion of the world's population, especially considering that at least a third of the population was killed off after the first two wall breaches, remember? So in conclusion, they won't be heroes, they won't count as advocates for peace. Eldians and Paradise by extension will be seen as the metaphorical monsters of the world, instead of the literal monsters before. Non-spinal fluid injected Eldians were already treated as metaphorical monsters before, and we know how the world treated those people. Now let me explain the second Deus Ex Machina of the story, love. Yes, the Stockholm Syndrome is worth mentioning here, but have you seen a single loving or happy expression of Ymir in the entirety of the story up until the killing of Eren? Ymir did not love Karl Fritz. This is just another plot device required to explain why she chose Mikasa, someone able to overcome their love. Mikasa didn't overcome her love, by the way. Ymir wasn't enslaved for 2000 years, Ymir was enslaved for eternity. If we assume the path works as Eren says. All while she didn't really want to be a slave in the first place, a very cheap way to make sense of a nonsensical plot. This extends to Eren as well. Eren's love for Mikasa is completely and utterly made up, and anyone who has actually read and watched the story unfold can tell that throughout the entirety of the story, Eren has never seen Mikasa as anything more than a precious family member. He was and is not in love with Mikasa, at least not until chapter 131. Hajime Isayama said, "For Eren, rather than a lover, Mikasa's presence is more like a mother to him. Love towards a mother is considered valuable or precious, however, at the same time there are annoying parts as well. Just like towards one's actual mother, Eren will start to grow up when he becomes independent from Mikasa, might draw the scene one day." While he did say there's a chance that he may see her in a different light, really showcasing that in a single chapter doesn't make a lot of sense. But this also tells us that he 100% retcons Eren's character somewhere down the line. Eren loved Mikasa as family, and that is the end of that relationship, until he didn't, I guess. But here Isayama introduces this DEM to resolve his motive, to make Eren a more easily digestible character. He writes his main character just so this also revised ending makes more sense. And there's more. Eren does not know why he's following the path he's on, and he also doesn't know why exactly Ymir chose Mikasa. And it gets even better. What if I told you that Eren isn't even 100% aware of whether or not the Titan power will end after his death? Armin proposes that there may be another way, but Eren doesn't respond with, "No, this is the only way. The Titan's power will be removed from this world after I die." Eren says he can't keep on living because he won't be forgiven. Eren does not actually know or desire the end of the Titans. His future memory shards he is seeing ends with his death. He does not know that the Titans will be gone, and again, he says he doesn't know why he did what he did, which again contradicts with the deterministic future he was shown. Let's track back a bit. After Eren tells Armin his absolutely pathetic fanfiction of Mikasa, and beforehand his very weak or non-existent motive, Armin takes his hand. The logical Armin that is able to dissect very critical and impossible situations doesn't really care about or questions Eren's insane story, and instead asks Eren about Mikasa and gets upset at Eren for the verbal abuse of her? What? This is not at all like Armin, again another character assassinated. The story was never about romance or a happy life ever after. Armin only focuses on that. Nonsense. And obviously Eren's reaction of that is the product of the Deus Ex Machina of love. You became a mass murderer for our sake, and then you don't even pull all the way through and you put Eldians in the same or even worse situation than before. You don't even know if this will end the Titan rule, but thanks, mate. How about the how about the worm? A lot of people have pointed out that it is dissipating right here as this source of fire. It is not only incredibly vague for the literal source of the 2000 years of Titan rule to just disappear without a real explanation, but it could also be Falco's Titan disappearing, or any Titan really. Last time we saw the worm, Annie and Peak were holding it down alongside Reiner being overwhelmed by Titans. How is this a good way to conclude this godlike power? Historia becoming pregnant for the sake of not being turned into the Beast Titan. But even that theory has its holes. Are you saying the people wouldn't kill an unborn child for the sake of survival? Who says pregnant Historia is unable to become the Beast Titan? How does that protect her? For all this time, Historia was used as a parallel to Ymir. Yet those parallels were entirely dismissed. Historia was supposed to be the key to free her, not Mikasa. Ymir, and a big part of the Attack on Titan universe, is based on Norse mythology. In some interpretations, Ymir is the first human to be born into the new world after Ragnarok, which is the equivalent of the rumbling in Shingeki no Kyojin. So because so much of the story is inspired by that very mythology, one logical outcome would be Ymir's reincarnation as a free human being, or the first one in that case, as Historia's child, which again is just one solution. Which would also tie into the announced last panel, which ended up being completely irrelevant. The entire character of Ymir was most likely retconned, and Historia's pregnancy alongside that. Anyways, let's get back to the final chapter's next plot hole. How in the world did these Marleans survive after this explosion of Titans was shown in chapter 138? The entire hill exploded with Titans, and you're telling me basically every Marlean on that fort survived that mayhem without a scratch? Another nonsensical plot device used to allow Armin to make his famous parallel speech back when the trio was shot by a cannon. But there's one more fanfiction plot hole. Why does the Yeagerist army chant Eren's "if we win we live, if we lose we die, if we don't fight we can't win," and "fight, fight"? Both of these expressions are only known to like one person in the entire world. These quotes are only relevant for the reader. None of these people should know any of those phrases. Again, another way to appeal to the reader instead of having a coherent story. Honestly, one of the most pathetic inclusions of fanfiction. And now let's talk about the actual ending, the conclusion of the story. Paradise is in the same situation as before, maybe an even worse one. Mikasa is still not free from her love, the Titans were eradicated, yet the world is the same place, and to top it off, Eren didn't even really know that he achieved that. The story went from a cruel yet realistic tragedy about what it takes to overcome insurmountable odds, about sacrificing your very humanity, to a half-assed romance fanfiction that didn't resolve a single thing these people fought for their entire life. Every death of the story hasn't amounted to anything besides the ending of the Titan era, which realistically does not change the situation Paradise and the Eldians are in. Now before I conclude this video, there's one more very interesting Isayama lore part that I would like to share. Isayama most likely took great inspiration for Attack on Titan from a book called The Eternal Champion, and intended the original ending to be similar to the film The Mist. Let's start with the Eternal Champion. I'll show you a quote. "I swear I shall kill all Eldren. All? Every single Eldren life. You will spare none? None. None. I want it to be over, and the only way I can finish it is to kill them all. Then it will be over. Only then. Including Prince Arjav and his sister? Including them. You swear this? You swear it? I swear it. And when the last Eldren dies, when the whole world is ours, then I will bring it to you, and we shall be married." Does this sound familiar? The book is about an all-out war between the Eldren and the humans. The Eternal Champion's ending essentially portrays the leader of the humans to decide to actually kill all of his own kind after finding out about the real history of his race. He goes as far as killing every single human on the planet, every innocent being, that is human. He has to sacrifice the entire human race to achieve what he thinks is right. Let's also take a look at the Mist ending. In an interview which I could track back to around August of 2017, which is around chapter 90 release, he stated, "Although I'm progressing towards the ending that had been said before, my approach towards the ending itself has changed from the original plans. I feel responsible towards the reader. I originally wanted to illustrate something similar to the film, The Mist." So let's explain that one as well. The Mist is about giant insect creatures preying on humans in a town shrouded in mists. Does that sound familiar to you again? At the very end, the main character is faced with a decision. His child and his friends are at the verge of being killed by those creatures. They agree on mercy killing each other, but the gun he has only has 4 bullets for the 5 people present. He decides to put the burden on himself and kills everyone else, offering himself to a cruel death. But right where he thinks he will get devoured by those creatures, he's saved by the US Army. He has now killed 3 of his friends and his child for no reason, as he is saved and they would have been as well. So I wanted to end the video with this because we can all see that these 2 endings are extremely cruel and unsettling, but realistic. Isayama instead decided to retcon his ending to change the outcome of his story more than halfway through. And that's why this ending feels so incredibly out of place and poorly written. One last quote. "The ending has changed a lot from what I had in mind in the beginning. As more and more people became familiar with Attack on Titan and loved the characters, I came to the realization that the ending I originally prepared would never work. At the beginning of the series, I was more interested in shocking the readers than pleasing them, but now I think it would be great to take a more professional approach."